Hey everyone, I'm NornQueenAlexis and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are talking once again about our Beginner's Guide series with the most iconic of Warhammer's armies, the Angels of Death themselves, the Adeptus Astartes, otherwise known as the Space Marines. The Space Marines are without a doubt the most iconic thing from Warhammer 40k, clad in their gigantically oversized power armor with weapons that are capable of destroying tanks in a single shot. The Space Marines are, in a sense, incredible. One of my personal favorite armies. In fact, in my top 3. Which, as you guys know, are Sisters of Battle, Tyranids, and then Space Marines. In today's video, we will be going over 3 simple things, which is their lore, a basic intro to their lore, their tactics on the battlefield, depending on chapter, and I will be bringing up chapters, by the way, and, of course, a beginner's guide to buying some Space Marines. So, before I fully get into this, I will be making a slight, what is the word that I'm looking for? It is a word that means that I am just being vague when it comes to all of this, and I cannot remember what it's called right now, and it is bugging me. But anyway, I will be going over just basic things about the Ultramarines, the Imperial Fists, the White Scars, the Raven Guard, the Salamanders, the Iron Hands, the Black Templar, and the Crimson Fist, which are all chapters that appear in your 8.2 edition of Warhammer 40k's Space Marines Codex. I do say that this is 8.2 because this is the second codex that the Space Marines have gotten, and it is the one that is currently being used by the Space Marine Army. We are going to be talking about these supplements coming out in the near future, but they will be covered in this video in a very, very, very brief way, okay? Now, let's start off with their lore. Strap in, because this is a doozy, okay? Bear with me, I'm going to try to explain this in the easiest way possible. The Emperor, essentially Super Jesus, had 21 kids. Yes, there's 21. Don't try to fight me on that. There's 21. 2 of them are twins. They count as 2 different people. I don't care what anybody tries to say. Anyway, split that in half. Half of them fell to chaos, half of them stayed with the Imperium. Out of that half that stayed with the Imperium, they had Space Marine legions dedicated to them. Legions, not chapters. Keep this in mind. The legions draw their genetic material from their Primarchs, the son of the Emperor. The sons of the Emperor, the Primarchs, are made out of the Emperor's genes, combined that with the child itself. They became godlike deities in themselves, essentially demigods, which then their genetic material went down into each individual Space Marine to create the Space Marine Legion. After the Horse Heresy, they split up the legions because they realized, hey, this is a little bit too crazy. Probably shouldn't be controlling 100,000 Space Marines. They split them up into chapters. Each chapter is 1,000 to 1,200 men, depending on the chapter, of course. Black Templar are a little bit lenient in that regard. Space Wolves are a little bit all over the place with that. But the rough estimate is 1,000 Marines per chapter. So, what does all of that mean? Okay, let's get into it. Space Marine is your standard, typical, basic troop of Warhammer 40k. So, essentially, he's a godlike killing machine. What this means is simple. A Space Marine is taken from a youth, a young adult / child who is just going through puberty or just ending puberty, and they extend it using the gene seed and technology to transform them into a Space Marine. Essentially what they do is they stick a giant node inside this kid's neck and go, hey, Billy, don't die, as it transforms them into a Space Marine. To become a Space Marine, you have to have several implants into your bodies. One is a second heart, one is another lung, one is getting your bones like super hardened, one is, which actually is kind of detrimental, but I digress. One is the node in your neck, which makes you into the Space Marine to begin with, and there's a few others. A lot of them aren't important, like the ability to rip somebody's brain out of their head eat it, and gain their knowledge. That is something a Space Marine can do. Then they can chew that up after gaining its knowledge and spit it as acid. That is another thing Space Marines can do. If Space Marines suffer critical damage, i.e. getting penned through the chest a few times, that Space Marine crawls up into the fetal position, secretes a sap-like substance, goes into a catatonic state, and survives until he is treated. Space Marine gets thrown into the void, no problem. Goes into that same fetal position and just drifts in space endlessly until he's found. Depending on the writers, of course. Space Marines have a ridiculous amount of abilities, and I'm not really going to get into them too much. I can tell you this, they are listed in your codex, and they are quite ridiculous. But all of that said, what makes a Space Marine is their chapters, their colors, their iconography, and what they actually represent. As stated before, they are the angels of death. They are the legions of, well, they're crazy, okay? So, Space Marines are the forefront of the defenders of mankind. They are the strongest ones, excluding the custodians, the Sisters of Silence, the Emperor himself, the Primarchs, the Knights, the Titan Legions, some AdMech. They're there, though. They are there. The Imperial Navy, the Void Ships. There's a lot of things that are more powerful than Space Marines. But I digress. Space Marines are amazing. So, a little bit more about the lore. Space Marines are shock and awe units similar to the U.S. Marines of today. They go into very dangerous scenarios. They do what they need to do. They destroy the enemy. They get out. They try to minimize casualties as much as possible because the making of a Space Marine takes a very long time. And each one that dies is a huge blow to the chapter. That being said, the new Primaris Space Marines definitely are more survivable, tougher, stronger, faster, and smarter than their predecessor, whether they want to admit it or not. Now, going past that, Space Marines tend to drop in mid-range to mid-range to close-range combat for the most part. There are chapters that are dedicated to long-range as well as void warfare, as well as close assault and suppression. If there is a tactic on the battlefield, Space Marines can fill that role. They are the most flexible army in all of 40k for that exact reason. Now, if you want some reading recommendations, I can list them in the description down below for good reading recommendations for Space Marines. I love these guys. They're amazing. That being said, what else can we say about them? The Space Marines' weapon, for instance, the bolter, or the bolt rifle, or whichever bolt variant that they have, is a rapid-fire, grenade-launching, RPG-launching death machine that has a spirit itself living inside it that they speak to that fires, and it's crazy. I keep saying crazy and I'm messing up quite a bit, so I apologize. I'm just really interested to get into the tactics. There's a lot that makes Space Marines Space Marines. They're siege experts, they're vanguards, they're an armored company. They are what is needed at the time to win the battle. They are the angels of death. So, let's get into some of the tactics of the Space Marines themselves. So looking over, you have quite a lot to choose from. So picking your force is going to be rather difficult because I can literally keep scrolling. Like this is insane. The level of insanity that they have. That being said, it really depends on what chapter you want to go for. For instance, and I'm going to take these off. For instance, Ultramarines are a very mid-range army, usually bottling up in a castle and firing at the opponent while slowly advancing up the battlefield. The Imperial Fists are very much the same, but their castle's a little bit better, and their bolt weapons are better, where Space Marines might maximize in Devastator companies or Tactical Marines. The Imperial Fists will take Centurions, Dreadnoughts with Hurricane Bolters, and lots of different options, which maximize their abilities based on their bolt weaponry. So really depends on how you want to run them. The White Scars are a very fast army. With them, you want very fast units, bikers, inceptors, veterans. I'm trying to look for what they're called, inceptors and assault marines. You want the fast units to go in and hit your opponent as hard as possible. Even land speeders are actually really useful with them. The Raven Guard. This is your long-range army, which is rather silly considering that their characters are based around close combat, so I digress about that. But this is where you want your eliminators, you want your devastators, you want your long-range army to step up and blow your opponent away while hiding in the shadows. The Salamanders. This is more of a specialist army. This is where you want your very unique army placement, where you want small units that can maximize the ability of re-rolling to hit and wound with one weapon per squad. Tactical Marines are actually pretty useful here, though I still don't recommend them. They're really good with base units such as Hellblasters and things of that nature. Their dreadnoughts are really good, their tanks are really good, and overall you can't go wrong with them. They are a slow-moving and mid-range army. The Iron Hands are once again actually, these guys are the machine ones. These are the ones where you want to maximize your armor divisions, your dreadnoughts, your tanks, your tech marines, and you want to grind out your opponent based on your high defense and your ability to just lay siege to them. Okay, moving on, your Black Templar. This is your assault army. If you know anything about Black Templar, you know that you want to get up, get quick, and get in their face as quickly as possible and smash them into the ground. For example, see my Blood Angel list. Think of them, but black and white. The Black Templar employ Vanguard veterans, assault marines, inceptors, reavers, everything that can get up close. Phobos armor is amazing with them for getting up close and just hitting your opponent as hard as you can in melee combat. And what's better than glorious melee combat? Then you have the Crimson Fist. Take everything good about the Imperial Fist and bounce it up by one more, because the Crimson Fist have the ability of shooting things that have more min numbers and dealing more damage to them. So instead of the Imperial Fist lack of shooting into cover and denying it, the Crimson Fists shoot into hordes and demolish them. Now, how would I go about starting a generic Warhammer 40k army is iffy. So I run my Space Marines very uniquely. I run them at a mid-range to long-range army. I typically shy away from close combat with my Marines, though I do know how to run close combat, and I am slowly trying to build that up. So for the most part, I stick to Ultramarines because I really do like the blue, and I do like the generic, the simple look of the Ultramarines. I think they look incredible. Personally, I love them. I also love Guilliman. But that all being said, I like the well-roundedness of the Ultramarines versus the other chapters. For instance, if I take a vehicle with Ultramarines and it gets bogged down into close combat, I can simply back that vehicle up and still fire with it. Everything in the Ultramarines army keeps their tactical diversity. Even locked down in combat, they are still good. So if I were to build an Ultramarine force, for instance, and this is the generic buy list for the Ultramarines, strictly Ultramarines, I would not buy any of the characters, okay? Don't buy any of these characters. And I'm telling you this from personal experience, do not buy them. Every single one of these characters, even as cool as they look, the named characters like Vulcan, he stand here, can be made from the generic kits at a much cheaper price, with you still getting the most out of your boxes. So like a chaplain, yeah, you're going to need a chaplain every now and then. But a named character, which is what I'm talking about, like Vulcan, he stand here, you can actually make him out of a standard kit. But that being said, chaplains are extremely good, and I kind of do like them, especially now with litanies. Litanies make the chaplain almost, in my opinion, almost a must-have in the army. But bearing the way that I run my Space Marines, my Ultramarines, I am going to be taking a captain and a lieutenant, both of which can actually be made out of the Assault Marine box, because I run mine with jump packs. Jump pack captains, jump pack librarians, and jump pack chaplains allow the army to have tactical maneuverability on the battlefield itself. This allows them to jump up to where is needed versus having to walk up. Assault Marines jump infantry in general can move up on top of buildings, jump behind cover, jump over infantry to attack vital characters, and get into combat as quickly as possible and as quickly as needed. They can also get to support positions very quickly in case another captain or sergeant or lieutenant die. Now, that being said, a good kit to build captains and pretty much all of your characters out of is actually the Vanguard Veteran Squad. It comes with a plethora of different weapons and war gear, as well as just having the generic bodies to just go, this is a captain. Because nobody is going to argue with you if you take this person right here, this Marine right here, and say that this is my captain. No one is going to question that and be like, that's a Vanguard veteran, you can't do that. Unless you have the 4 other ones with them. But if you go, this is my captain in jump pack with Terminator arm, Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, and this is my lieutenant with Power Sword, jump pack, no one is going to question you. In fact, you can even say that this guy is your librarian now, and still no one will question you. Just put a little bit of extra stuff with some green stuff, or just make him very unique looking. Paint him the colors that are necessary. Hey, you can even take his armor, paint it black, and just call him your chaplain without a helmet on. And still nobody would question you if he had the right war gear for a Space Marine character. This is why I think Space Marine characters are a little bit when it comes to buying them. You don't necessarily need them. So keep this in mind while trying to buy your army. Vanguard Veteran Box is also just a very good box to get some bodies and some cool poses and some more dynamic Marines. Now, moving on from your captains, when it comes to Ultramarines, you have the full tactical choice of anything and all things that you want, aside from the Black Templar exclusive models. So, if it were me running them, I would probably start off with not to start collecting. Do not buy this start collecting. It is absolutely the worst start collecting, aside from the chaos start collecting, which I will get to in another video. Terminator characters are pretty much useless. You might as well just take a Primaris one in Mark 11 armor, the Gravis armor, which is cheaper and better in all ways than this captain. Don't take Tactical Marines. Tactical Marines are not worth it. Dreadnoughts, on the other hand, are worth it. But Tactical Marines, not worth it. Avoid them. Okay? I'm going to give you that warning now. They are pretty cool, but there are better options out there. In fact, the best option in my opinion, for starting to collect Ultramarines, in fact, most armies in this book, which is all of the Space Marine armies, is actually Dark Imperium. You cannot go wrong with this set. This set is perfect for starting off a Warhammer 40k Space Marine army, regardless of the chapter, because it gives you Hellblasters, 2 squads of Intercessors, a captain, a lieutenant, an ancient, and another lieutenant, one with a bolt rifle and pistol, which you cut off the pistol and put another sword there, and he has a power sword as well, or you give him a power fist from your Vanguard box, and boom, you got it. Now, this is beyond my $100 startup fee that I usually set this for, but you always want to look for a friend to split these boxes. The Dark Imperium is a perfect starting point for starting a Nurgle army, as well as any Space Marine army. It is literally good for all of them. You have Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Dark Angels, you have Deathwatch. You can do all of them with this box. They are the snap fit models, so if you are doing them for Deathwatch, you may have to do some conversions, so I would avoid this box for a little bit for Deathwatch, so I apologize about that. But Dark Angels, all the generic Marine chapters, perfect with this box. But say you can't afford this box. Say you can't find somebody to split it with. And you're like, Alexis, I actually need some help building a proper army. I have $100 at my disposal. First off, I'm going to say you have more money on you right now than I do. Okay? So, with that all said, I'm going to look at you and just go, what would I buy for $100? Well, and let's just call this guy John. Yeah, John. So, John over here is trying to buy White Scars. And John over here is a really nice and polite guy that's really awesome and makes a great mod. By the way, John is awesome. Anyway, John comes up to me and he's like, Alexis, I want to buy some White Scars. So I look at John and I go, okay, here's what I would suggest for you. First off, take a look for some bikes. Bikes for the White Scars are actually really good, but in my opinion, the Gravis Armored Inceptors are a little bit better. But they're also really expensive. You know, it is what it is. So I would suggest for him to buy, this is actually a tough choice because of the tactical flexibility of Space Marines. You have a ton of different things to choose from. Again, avoid the characters when you're first starting your army. If you want to add these to your army later on, by all means do it. But for now, avoid them. If you're going to get characters, get them in the box sets that they come in. Let's see. John wants to start White Scars. How would I go about doing this? Well, for an initial starting army, I would suggest, probably Vanguard to get those HQs. Actually, no, there's a better set. If you can't afford Dark Imperium, there might be this secondary set, No Fear. This is actually, again, perfect for starting an army, because once again, they can be used as literally anything. The No Fear box set contains your captain, an Intercessor squad, an Inceptor squad, and a Hellblaster squad. And guess what? You can split this with somebody. So we're going to count this as $40 to $80, depending on if you actually get to split it with somebody. If you do, it's $40. And I would suggest buying 2 of these. So you would get 2 squads of these, 2 of him, 2 of them, 2 of them, which is ridiculously good for a starter army. Or, at that point, you might as well just get Dark Imperium. For $80, you get all of the other characters. You get 2 squads of these, 2 squads of Hellblasters, and you get 2 of them. So it really depends how you want to start this. I still think the start collectings and, well, not the start collecting, the Dark Imperium / No Fear boxes are the best way to start any of the basic faction armies. But let's just say his store randomly doesn't have them. Okay? I don't know how, but his store does not have them. Well then, we have a pickle here. I would suggest you pick up probably some Primaris Reavers for a really cool army, but we need to get your troop choices first, which is where you should always start with your army. Primaris Interceptors, $60, you get 10 of them. Cool. We have $40 to work with. With that $40, we have to determine what we want to get. So, we could go to the easy to build things, and we could buy these guys and then use the bits from this box set to create captains out of these guys. We can even create a psyker or a librarian out of these just by simply swapping out the arms. But let's just say you can't do that either. You add these guys to the you add these guys to the regular box set, and you take 3 guys out of the build-a box set, which have all the options, and you build them into your characters. That's how you would do that, by the way. Let's say maybe your store has this, which is also insane for a starter army. Shadow Spear is crazy, and you can split this with a generic Chaos player of any of the gods, and it would be good for them. But let's just say you can't do the box sets. Can't do the box sets. Okay? So I'd suggest the Intercessors for $60, and then you would need something else. So you have $40 at your disposal to use. Avoid Terminators. Terminators are bad. They're really bad. Avoid Tactical Marines. They're bad. They're really bad. Ignore them. I would say buy your Intercessors and then buy your Vanguard Veterans for $100. This would be perfect for a starter for a White Scars army. And this is assuming, of course, you cannot get the box sets. Because if you can get the box sets, you get the box sets. Okay? That's $100, get you 2 troop choices, multiple HQs, and 3 extra guys that you can use towards anything. Now, these 3 extra guys will come in handy once you start getting more and more into your army. You can run them as jump pack librarians, jump pack chaplains, jump pack captains, and jump pack pretty much everything. Like, you get your generic captain, you give him a jump pack. Your generic HQ, you give him a jump pack. Now, for any other army, Imperial Fists, you want to maximize on Intercessors, max out on your Intercessors, give them the auto bolt rifle, just walk across the battlefield blowing everything away. You want the generic box sets for these, not the Start Collectings, but Dark Imperium, No Fear, or Shadow Spear would be perfect for them. The Raven Guard, you want Shadow Spear. You strictly want Shadow Spear. The Phobos Marines, plus the Eliminators, plus the Suppressors, is really good for them. It is excellent for them. Or you can go with the long range for Intercessors and just blow away your opponent at range. With Salamanders, you're in the same boat. With Iron Hands, you're in the same boat. Everything the Space Marine Army boils down to is just picking a chapter and then buying one of the starter sets. Or you can buy Intercessors, 2 captains, or 2 HQ models, and go from there. So, with that all done, the basic lore is out of the way, basic tactics are out of the way, and the basic buy is out of the way. If you have any questions about this series, please comment them in the comment section down below. If this episode was a little bit confusing because I did stumble across my words quite a few times, I do apologize, but please leave your comments in the comment section down below because I do want to hear them. As always, please check out all the links in the description down below. Follow me on all sorts of social media, including Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, which you're here, Instagram, and Facebook. If you're super awesome, you can check out my Patreon and maybe become a supporter if you like what we are doing here. And as always, I'm NornQueenAlexis. I love you guys. Bye.